Okay, hi everybody. I'm Baz. I'm the chief engineer at Drawboard. And I'm going to talk about speeding up our CI a little bit, which is one of those things where I dropped a comment on Slack and Jesse wrote me in to do a talk. So basically, don't ever say anything like that on Slack, otherwise Jesse will make you speak about it, which might be okay. So first of all, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about our CI setup, just in case anyone is interested in how we do it. I think it's pretty standard, but people might have different ideas about what constitutes a good CI setup or not. I don't know if this is a good one. We're using Microsoft's Azure DevOps, which used to be called VSTS, and will probably be called something different next week because they change the name frequently. For the moment, it's Azure DevOps. We use that across all of our apps that we build, which is on the client side, we have a web app, we have a UWP app for Windows, and we have a cloud, back-end services, cloud API. All of those go through the same tooling, different build pipelines, obviously. On the iOS side, we have some links to Microsoft's App Center in there, which we were using to deploy beta builds to people. I actually don't do that anymore. And it was using Fastlane scripts to run the build pipeline. We have 4 build pipelines. We have one that runs for every PR that's going to be merged into the develop branch, which is the main branch, which is pretty standard. We run a daily QA build, 7 o'clock every morning. Spits out a build that the QAs can use if they want to. And there's like an ad hoc build using a different app ID, which I manually kick off every couple of days, or if there's like a significant piece of work has gone in to the code base, then maybe I'll kick that off. The reason I use a different app ID is so that people can install that app and the live app off the App Store side by side and test both at the same time. We have a production pipeline as well for live App Store builds. All of those are basically, they're really similar. Most of the difference between them is just some configuration settings, just to turn logging on and off and things like that. That's what Azure DevOps looks like these days. Left-hand side, you create some tasks, which are mostly usually just scripts that you call into your Fastlane scripts. And the right-hand side is some options that you enter details into, for example, where to run the script, or if it's the certificates, you might provide a password, things like that. It's pretty simple. It's almost essentially like drag and drop when you know what you're building. To be honest, I've been pretty impressed by the Azure DevOps setup. It's easy. I think you can actually, I think behind this is actually a script file that you can edit as a text file as well. But to be honest, this interface is fine, and it works really well. And I've actually found the whole thing to be really stable. Like, it never goes down, it works pretty well. From the GitHub side of things, we have, obviously GitHub kicks this off every time you do a PR. You require a review for the PR, and it requires that the CI setup passes each time. That's done by these rules. You can't really see that probably very well. Basically, it has to pass CI in order for a PR to get merged. So, starting point, from when I joined the company, we already had all this pretty much up and running. Build time is about 15 minutes, which is okay. It's not terrible. It's actually fairly fast. I've seen a lot worse than that. There you go, 15 minutes at the top. Most of the things, ooh, I didn't know that was going to happen. That's pretty cool. Pretty much everything takes like seconds. Installing certificates and spinning up the container to run it and all that, there's nothing we can really do about that. It's all fast. And obviously the Xcode build and test times, you can optimize those a little bit, but not hugely that it makes that much of a difference. this one here, the Bootstrap script, had been bugging me for months. And I just never got around to doing anything about it. I'm like, it's taking a while every time, it seems too long. But I can't be bothered having a look to see what's going on there, I'll just leave it. It's okay. It doesn't fail, therefore it's fine. So what was that script doing? It was installing brew and rbenv, installing the required Ruby version that we'd specified in our .ruby version file, doing a git submodule update, installing yarn, doing a yarn bundle, bundling the gems that were required, doing a pod install for some reason, even though the pods are checked in. Running through all that took obviously 5-6 minutes every time. And it's just unnecessary and probably environmentally unfriendly as well. So there was the great purge of 2019, where we removed all of the legacy iOS code. So for a bit of context, basically this app is essentially being rewritten completely from version 1 to version 2. Well, not pretty much, 100% of the old code in the app is now gone. It was deleted. Part of that was a couple of React Native screens that were in there. As part of that, I wanted to simplify the pod file. Now, a lot of that stuff was required because removing React Native meant we no longer needed to import a whole bunch of pods that React Native needed. So at the same time, I'm like, okay, why not? If I'm going to be deleting a whole bunch of stuff anyway, use that as an opportunity to revise the build script at the same time. Because we no longer needed a whole bunch of that stuff. We didn't need the yarn stuff. We didn't need a whole bunch of the pods that React Native used. So I had to go in and change the file anyway, so I may as well make it a bit streamlined as much as I can. That's what the PR looked like, minus 1.5 million lines of code, right? That's what happens when you remove React Native from a project. It's nuts, like it's completely ridiculous. Because I look at that and I go, well, that's 1.5 million lines of code that can't cause a bug anymore. Fantastic, right? That's obviously a good thing. And the other good thing about this is I will never, no matter how much code I write in this job, I will never be net positive in code contribution to this project. I just can't do it.
Until you add React Native back.
Yeah, yeah. Or the next thing, whatever the next great silver bullet is. Yeah. So I changed the Bootstrap script. I started to change it with a mindset of let's keep it as close to the current script as possible. But then I realized that the current script was kind of written for humans. It was written for spinning up a new laptop. Like a new developer comes on, they need a new install of the project. So they need all this stuff. But actually, CI isn't the same situation as that. It doesn't need to run the same script, which is really obvious actually, but for some reason it didn't occur to me until a couple of days into it. So I split the scripts and made CI run a different script from humans. So the human script is still, I mean, it doesn't have all the yarn and all that, but it's still more extensive than the script that runs for CI. I decided to not reinstall Ruby every time because the container that Azure DevOps spins up has Ruby. I don't need to be that strict about exactly which version of Ruby I use. I can just use whatever the container uses. And if that means that a developer needs to keep a version of Ruby on the machine, fine, no big deal. So essentially the new script, it runs an Xcode select just to make sure the right version of Xcode is available, which is really a Fastlane, like an upload thing to make sure that Fastlane can actually upload using the right version of Xcode to the App Store. And it does a bundle install to make sure that the versions of Fastlane and something else I can't remember are correct. So it's pretty, it doesn't do much anymore. Yeah, Fastlane, yeah. I don't love Fastlane, I find it very confusing. I find the naming of the things really bizarre. Like what's gym supposed to mean and all that? Like, I don't know. So I thought, okay, I'll try and not use Fastlane at all. Because the various tasks that Azure DevOps gives you cover all of the things that Fastlane does. But when I ran those, it turns out they just call Fastlane. They just call a version of Fastlane that's installed in the container already. So I thought, well, if it's going to call Fastlane anyway, I may as well be in control of the version of Fastlane and what we're doing with it in our own fast file. So I just went back to using our own fast file. I simplified it a little bit, but basically we just used that, pretty much the same fast file that was there before. I took out pushing builds to App Center because we used to use that to deploy beta builds to users. We now do that through TestFlight, so I got rid of all that, which meant there was kind of like one less step. It used to send builds to App Center, and then they would send, that would send the builds to Apple. No point in doing that, may as well just send it straight to TestFlight. So total build time went down to about 6 minutes, which is good. Thank you, very impressive. The bootstrap time is like seconds, which is fine. I mean, most of that build time now, or the majority of it is the actual Xcode build and a little bit of running tests. I don't think I can make it any faster. So, was it worth it? I mean, it was like, maybe this was like a day's work, you know, like a spread over a few days, a couple of hours here and there, but it was maybe like a solid day's work. It's faster, obviously, so that's good. But I think the most useful thing is it's much, much simpler. There's so fewer moving parts now that it's much more understandable for people. It's a little bit more brittle because it's using what's supplied by the container. So that'll break when Microsoft decide to update the container. Probably, like, I'm imagining WWDC time, and it'll get a bit hairy because things will start to break as Microsoft push things into the container, or in September. But it's simple enough now that that's okay. I think it'll be easily fixable. Like, it might break for a couple of builds. It'll take it, you know, an hour later it'll be fixed. And I still miss buddy build because that was really easy. I wish I could just use that again. So here's hoping for WWDC this year. So in short, maybe your scripts are doing stuff you don't need. It's worth checking. Just have a look every now and again, chip away at it. Don't just, I spent a long time like I'm not touching it. I don't fully understand what this does. I'm just going to leave it. It's working. But every now and again, maybe just have a look and say, is this working optimally? Chip away, simplify things. I mean, that's pretty much what I say every day to people. Just simplify, simplify, simplify. It always makes life easier. That's it. Thank you.
Let's use the mic. Take a good question. We'll start down there and come back.
Hey, love the presentation, especially about coming from a back-end background. Like, seeing build times reduce is always a satisfying feeling.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. So I guess one question I had was, so I noticed that you said the developers and the build machines and the CI are using different versions of in terms of the environment. Like, have you found that have you run into any problems of there being a difference between those two, considering?
Not really, because the developers never, you're not really doing the same thing. Like, the developers never run Fastlane scripts locally. Like, it's not, you know, we don't ever really have to do it. So it never really, I haven't seen it cause a problem. And also, every setup script that I've ever seen doesn't work when the next developer comes along and tries to run it anyway. So they're kind of not that useful. Like, we have this great idea that you'll have a Bootstrap script that the next developer can run and it'll just make everything work fine. And it never does, because the developer's already installed RVM on the machine and it's screwed up the Rubies or whatever. And like, it just never really works out like that.
I'll go here to sit that, then maybe you have more support to Renault. Yes.
I was going to ask about running sort of test cases before you merge your pull request. It seems like if you did that would increase the build time. So obviously, are you running the test? Like, are you running the unit?
Yeah, it runs tests every time.
So
test taker.
That timing is 6 minutes. That's
Yeah, that includes the test. So I think the build takes like 3 to 4 minutes, and the tests take 2 to 3 minutes, usually.
And the second question was, you mentioned that you got rid of App Center, but say if you had a pre-prod or QA environment and you had a production environment, ideally you would want to sort of build something against deployed App Center that points to Because once you push it out to test flight, usually it's production.
Yeah, so the way we, yeah, exactly. The way we deal with that is to have a, there's actually a, you like tap on the logo in the login screen 10 times and it opens up a preferences pane that allows you to switch environments. So that's how you get into the test and pre-prod environments and things like that. So it's not different builds, it's the live build, but with kind of hidden settings essentially.
Right, so when you absolutely just kind of hide that setting.
Yeah, and actually, that'd be. I should stick that in TIL. There's an interesting thing. Someone did a little snippet of code that detects test flight builds. So it does that. It detects if it's a test flight build and allows you to access those settings. And if it's not a test flight build, then you can't access those settings. Previously, we did it with a password, but this code has got around that.
I think you may have answered that already on Slack, but have you tried disabling indexing while building on your CI agent?
Yes.
And what was the result?
Like a couple of seconds saved. Yeah, it didn't really make much difference. Yeah.
So I think thanks a lot for sharing your experience and stuff. I think it's very important to always spend some time to optimize the developer workflow, happiness. I think it's really great. There's one thing, it applies to web as well. So there's one thing that Azure is missing from their pipelines is the ability to set cache. So if you were to set your node module like you had there, a million stuff, if you were able to set a cache and pull a cache, you'll speed up your builds. Like other CI systems have it. They started working on it last month, but it will speed up stuff. Same as you don't have to reinstall Ruby, etc. It will just take your Docker and stuff. Yeah. And some people don't spend the time creating their own Docker image for things. It's more like for the web.
Yeah. Actually, I should have asked the web guys how they find it and how their builds go, because I honestly haven't even looked at how their pipelines or how long they take. I know we had some problems when the web developers were using what's called the CI thing that's made in Melbourne, Buildkite. They were using that, and then they moved to Azure, and they just choked our pipelines for like a couple of days, and because their builds were, and also the way they were running builds was on every commit, I think it was, and they were just generating a lot of builds, and they were relatively slow, I think, so they ended up choking our pipeline. We just paid for more concurrent users. So yeah, I think that's a good point actually. I'll ask them tomorrow and see how theirs work for that, because I think theirs are relatively slow. Yeah.
And so, would you recommend Microsoft Azure for those pipeline stuff?
Yeah, I found it good actually. Yeah, I haven't had a problem with it at all. It's been really stable and it's easy to use. We used Buildkite at AKS and that was really good. And Buddy Build, I really like obviously.
Because it's the only service that does hosted OS 10 build in a known, I'm going to do everything like Bitrise and everything. That is super slow.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit more, you've got to, it's not as like all-encompassing as Buddy Build or whatever. Like you've got to do some setup to make it work. But once you've set it up, it's pretty good. Yep. Oh.
Hi. It's fascinating how fast can you go by just doing less, or writing your whole code base.
Was that something? Go again.
It's fascinating how fast you can go by doing less.
Yeah.
Or rewriting your whole code base.
Well, if you remove 1.5 million lines of code, you would think things would go faster?
Maybe.
Should be.
Thank you.